4 nannies quit without explanation. The 5th one left in the middle of the night, trembling and crying. When Saraphina arrived at the Kane penthouse, the butler handed her $30,000, her first month's advance. "The twins are upstairs," he said. "Mr. Kane doesn't go there anymore." "Why not?" "You'll understand soon. Just don't get attached." What Saraphina discovered in that room would break every rule of medicine. 2 children, trapped and conscious, screaming in bodies that wouldn't move. A father destroyed by guilt, and a secret so devastating it would change all their lives forever. By the end, 2 children will do the impossible, a broken father will be reborn, and Saraphina will face her own tragic past. This is what really happened in the Kane penthouse. Nothing is what it seems. But before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and tell us where you're watching from. Alaric Kane had everything money could buy. At 42 years old, he sat at the helm of a billion-dollar tech empire that stretched across 3 continents. His primary residence in Manhattan occupied an entire floor of a building he owned. He had homes in London, Tokyo, and the Swiss Alps. His car collection alone was worth more than most people would earn in 10 lifetimes. He had power, influence, respect. But 3 years ago, on a rainy October evening, everything changed. The accident happened on the Cross Bronx Expressway. Alaric had been driving home from his office, his wife Maria beside him, their 5-year-old twins secured in their car seats behind them. The traffic was heavy, the rain was coming down in sheets, and Alaric was exhausted from another 16-hour workday. He never saw the truck. It ran a red light at the intersection, a massive 18-wheeler carrying steel beams, and slammed into the passenger side of Alaric's SUV at 45 miles per hour. The sound of metal crushing metal, of glass shattering, of his wife's scream. Cutting off mid-breath, these were sounds that still woke him at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat and gasping for air. Maria died on impact. The medical examiner said she felt nothing, that it was instantaneous. Alaric supposed that was meant to be comforting. It wasn't. Arden and Leora survived, but the word survived felt like a cruel joke. The impact had caused catastrophic spinal injuries to both children. Complete paralysis from the neck down. The doctors at Mount Sinai had been cautious at first, talking about swelling and potential recovery, about waiting to see what function might return. But weeks became months, and the hope in their voices faded to something that sounded uncomfortably close to pity. "The damage is permanent," Dr. Patricia Chen had told him 6 months after the accident. She was the chief neurologist, a woman with kind eyes and a reputation for brutal honesty. "Both children have complete cervical spinal cord injuries. They will never walk again, Mr. Kane. They will never regain use of their arms or legs." "But they can think?" Alaric had asked. "They can understand what's happening to them?" Dr. Chen's pause had been answer enough, but she'd continued anyway. "The brain scans show minimal activity. We believe they're in what we call a minimally conscious state, possibly less. They may have some awareness, or they may have none. There's simply no way to know for certain. What I can tell you is that they show no signs of purposeful response to stimuli, no communication, no recognition." She'd placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, Mr. Kane. For all practical purposes, your children are gone." Alaric had nodded, thanked her. Walked out of her office and into the hospital bathroom, where he'd vomited until there was nothing left. That was 3 years ago. In the time since, Alaric had done what he did best. He'd thrown money at the problem. He'd converted the entire east wing of his Manhattan penthouse into a state-of-the-art medical facility. He'd hired the best nurses, the most qualified physical therapists, the top specialists in pediatric neurology. He'd given his children every possible advantage that wealth could provide. Everything except himself. Because the truth Alaric could barely admit, even in the privacy of his own thoughts, was that he couldn't look at Arden and Leora without seeing what he'd taken from them. Their mother, their futures, their ability to run and play and experience everything childhood was supposed to be. The guilt was a physical weight in his chest, pressing down on his lungs until some days he could barely breathe. So he'd done what seemed logical at the time. He'd created distance. He'd hired people to care about his children so he wouldn't have to feel the full force of his failure every single day. The twins became a responsibility he managed from a distance, like another division of his company. He reviewed their medical reports. He approved treatment plans. He ensured they had the best of everything. But he didn't visit. He didn't sit with them. He didn't talk to them. For 3 years, a rotation of nurses and caregivers had come and went through the twins' wing of the penthouse. Some stayed months, others only weeks. Alaric barely learned their names. They were competent, professional, and most importantly, they didn't ask him to be more than a signature on a paycheck. Until Saraphina arrived. She'd come through the same agency as all the others, with impeccable credentials and glowing references. The agency director had mentioned she specialized in pediatric care, that she had experience with severely disabled children, that several families had tried to hire her permanently, but she preferred the flexibility of contract work. Alaric had barely listened. He'd signed the contract, authorized the background check, and added her to the payroll without a second thought. She was supposed to be just another caregiver, another professional doing a job. But within her first week, Alaric noticed something that made him deeply, viscerally uncomfortable. Saraphina was different from all the others. She was quieter, for one thing. The previous nurses had been chatty, filling the silence with small talk and updates about the twins' vital signs. They'd treated Arden and Leora like patients, efficient, clinical, detached. Saraphina treated them like children. She spoke to them constantly, her voice soft and warm. She narrated everything she was doing. "I'm going to adjust your pillow now, Arden," and "Let's get you more comfortable, Leora, sweetheart." She played music in their room. She opened the curtains every morning and described the weather to them. She read them stories, actual children's books, complete with different voices for different characters. It was unsettling. More unsettling was how much time she spent with them. Her contract specified 8-hour shifts, but Alaric's housekeeper mentioned that Saraphina often stayed late, sometimes very late. She'd requested to be their primary caregiver, asking that the rotating nursing staff handle only the medical necessities while she managed everything else. And strangest of all, she seemed to prefer being with the twins over anywhere else in the massive penthouse. The other caregivers had taken their breaks in the staff lounge, had chatted with the housekeepers, had taken advantage of the building's amenities. Saraphina spent her breaks in the twins' room, sitting quietly between their beds, sometimes just watching them. In Alaric's world, everyone had an angle. Everyone wanted something. Kindness, in his experience, was a currency people spent expecting a return. So when he'd walked past the twins' room one evening and seen Saraphina sitting beside Arden's bed, holding his small, limp hand in both of hers, speaking to him with tears in her eyes, Alaric had made a decision. He would find out what she was really after. He would watch her, every move, every moment. He would discover her angle, and then he would fire her before she could exploit his children's condition for whatever game she was playing. The next day, he'd had security install hidden cameras throughout the twins' wing. 4 cameras in total, 1 in each corner of their bedroom, positioned to capture every angle. High definition, night vision capable, with audio feeds sensitive enough to pick up whispers. The security contractor had asked no questions. When you had Alaric Kane's money, people rarely did. That was 2 weeks ago. And what he'd discovered in those 2 weeks would shatter everything he thought he knew about his own children. For the first 3 days, the camera feeds showed exactly what Alaric expected. Saraphina arrived at 7 a.m. sharp. She greeted the twins cheerfully, opened their curtains, and began their morning routine. Checking vitals, administering medications, adjusting their positions to prevent bed sores, all standard procedure. But she talked to them constantly. About the weather, about a book she was reading, about a funny thing that happened on the subway. She spoke to them like they could hear her, like they might respond at any moment. Alaric watched from his study, telling himself it was eccentric but harmless. By day 4, he noticed something odd. Saraphina would pause sometimes in the middle of speaking, her head tilted slightly, as if she was listening. But the twins never made a sound. The monitors showed no change in their status. Yet Saraphina would smile, nod, and continue the conversation as though they'd responded. It was disturbing, like watching someone talk to ghosts. On day 7, Alaric saw her bring in items that weren't approved in the care plan. A small potted plant, which she placed on the windowsill. Lavender, she told the twins. It smells like summer. She held it near their faces, one at a time, describing the scent. The medical team had been clear. Unnecessary stimuli should be minimized. But Saraphina seemed to operate on her own protocol entirely. Day 9 brought something that made Alaric's jaw clench. He watched her lean close to Leora's face, her forehead nearly touching his daughter's. "I know you're in there," Saraphina whispered. "I know you can hear me, and I'm going to help you find your way back." Alaric's hand had moved toward his phone. This woman was delusional. He should fire her immediately, but something stopped him. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that despite her strange behavior, the twins' medical markers had actually improved slightly since her arrival. Their muscle tone was better. Their circulation showed marginal enhancement. So he kept watching. Day 12 was when everything changed. It was late, nearly midnight. Seraphina's shift had ended at 3 p.m., but the timestamp on the feed showed 11:47 p.m. She'd come back, let herself into the twins' wing with her key card. Alaric had sat up straighter in his chair. Finally, here was the proof. She was here after hours, unsupervised, doing God knows what. But she wasn't stealing. She wasn't tampering with equipment. She wasn't photographing anything for some tabloid exposé. She was singing. Saraphina sat in the chair between the twins' beds, and she began to sing. Not a lullaby, not a children's song. Something else entirely, haunting and melodic, in a language Alaric didn't recognize. Her hands moved in slow, deliberate patterns through the air. And that's when Arden's fingers moved. Alaric had frozen, staring at the screen. He rewound it, watched it again. There was no mistaking it. His son's right hand, which had been motionless for 3 years, was moving. The fingers were tapping, rhythmically, almost as if keeping time with Seraphina's song. Then he'd looked at Leora's face on the monitor. His daughter's eyes, those empty, vacant eyes, were crying. Tears streamed down her cheeks as Seraphina's song continued. Alaric's world tilted on its axis. He'd sat there in his study, hands trembling, watching the impossible unfold on his security monitors. When Seraphina finally left the twins' room at 12:30 a.m., Alaric remained frozen in his chair, unable to process what he'd witnessed. The doctors said his children were gone, locked away somewhere unreachable, if they existed at all anymore. But what he'd just seen suggested something entirely different. What he'd just seen suggested his children were still there, still present, still aware. And this strange, gentle maid was somehow reaching them in ways that millions of dollars in medical care had failed to do. Alaric made a decision in that moment. He wouldn't confront her. Not yet. He needed to understand what she was doing, how she was doing it. He needed to know if what he'd seen was real or some cruel trick of lighting and wishful thinking. So he would keep watching, keep waiting, and he would find out exactly who Saraphina really was. The next morning, Alaric did what he always did when he needed answers. He made a phone call. Marcus Webb had been Alaric's head of security for 8 years. Former FBI, now running a private investigation firm that catered exclusively to high-net-worth clients. If there was information to find, Marcus found it. "I need everything on Saraphina Moreau," Alaric said without preamble. "And I mean everything, not just what the agency gave me." "The new caregiver?" Marcus's voice was professionally neutral. "Something concerning." "Just do it. I want her full history. Where she's from, where she's worked, why she moves between positions, everything." 48 hours later, Marcus sent over a file. Alaric opened it in his study, and what he read made no sense. Saraphina Moreau was 31 years old, born in a small village in southern France to parents who died when she was 12, raised by her grandmother until age 18. Then she'd simply vanished from official records for 3 years. When she resurfaced, she was in Morocco, working at a children's hospital. Then Kenya, then India. Always pediatric care, always with the most severe cases, children with terminal illnesses, catastrophic injuries, profound disabilities. She never stayed long. 6 months here, 8 months there. Always left before families could offer her permanent positions despite repeatedly trying. She had no social media presence, no permanent address, no relationships that Marcus could find. She lived simply, took only what she needed, and moved like a ghost from one position to the next. Here's what's interesting, Marcus had noted in his summary. Every single family she's worked for has the same story. She connected with their child in ways no one else could. Several parents used the word miraculous when describing her care. But when pressed for details, they became evasive. Alaric had frowned at that. Evasive how? One mother in Mumbai told my investigator that her daughter, who'd been non-verbal for 2 years after a traumatic brain injury, spoke her first words to Saraphina. But when asked what Saraphina did to achieve this, the mother said she wouldn't understand and refused to elaborate. The file included interviews with 6 other families. The pattern was identical. Dramatic improvements in their children's conditions, profound gratitude towards Saraphina, and a strange reluctance to explain exactly what she'd done. And then there were the 3 years she'd disappeared. Marcus had found whispers, rumours, unconfirmed reports, stories of a young woman studying with healers in Tibet, learning from shamans in the Amazon, spending time in monasteries across Southeast Asia. Could be true, could be fabricated, Marcus had written, but one thing's certain, when she came back she was different. Every employer since has mentioned it. She has a way with the impossible cases, the ones everyone else has given up on. Alaric set down the file, his mind racing. Who was this woman? What had she learned in those 3 missing years? And what was she doing to his children in the darkness of their room? He needed to see it again, needed to confirm what he'd witnessed wasn't a fluke. So that night, Alaric stayed in his study, eyes fixed on the monitors, waiting. And at 11:43 p.m., Saraphina returned. Alaric watched her enter the twins' room like she owned it. No hesitation, no guilt. Saraphina moved with quiet confidence, setting down a small bag he hadn't seen before. She dimmed the lights until the room glowed soft and amber. Then she began. The singing was the same. That strange, haunting melody in a language he still couldn't identify. But tonight, Alaric noticed more. Her hands moved in specific patterns, tracing shapes in the air above each child. Not random, deliberate, almost ritualistic. And the twins responded. Arden's fingers didn't just move. They reached. His hand lifted slightly off the bed, trembling with effort, as if trying to grasp something invisible. The movement was small, perhaps an inch, but it was intentional, purposeful. Leora's response was even more dramatic. Her eyes tracked Saraphina around the room, following every movement. And then, God, her lips moved. No sound came out, but Alaric could see her mouth forming words. His heart hammered against his ribs. For 3 years, specialists had told him this was impossible. For 3 years, he'd mourned children who were still breathing. And now this stranger was proving everything wrong. Saraphina leaned close to Leora, her hand on the girl's cheek. I know, sweetheart, she whispered. I know it's hard. But you're doing so well. So incredibly well. She turned to Arden next. And you, brave boy, You're fighting so hard to come back. I can feel it. Alaric's hands clenched into fists. She was talking to them, like they could hear, like they could understand, like they were trapped and trying to break free. What if they were? The thought sent ice through his veins. What if his children had been conscious this entire time, aware but unable to communicate, locked inside their own bodies while he'd abandoned them to strangers? Saraphina stayed for an hour. When she finally left, Alaric sat in the darkness of his study, staring at the now empty room on his monitors. He'd seen enough. Tomorrow he would confront her. He would demand answers. And she would tell him everything. What she was doing, how she was doing it, and why his children were responding to her when they'd shown no response to anyone else. But as he watched the recording again, studying every movement, every gesture, a different question began to form. What if confronting her was a mistake? What if demanding explanations made her leave, like she'd left every other family? What if his need for control cost him the only person who seemed capable of reaching his children? Alaric ran his hands through his hair, exhaustion and confusion warring inside him. He'd built an empire on decisive action, on seizing control of situations, but this was different. These were his children. And for the first time in 3 years they showed signs of coming back. Could he risk losing that? The question haunted him through the sleepless night. And when morning came, Alaric still didn't have an answer. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Everything was about to change. You're right. Let me make this hit harder and faster. Alaric didn't wait for morning. At 11:30 p.m., he was already in the twins' room when Saraphina's keycard beeped at the door. She froze when she saw him sitting in the darkness. Cameras, Alaric said, standing. 4 of them. I've watched everything. Saraphina's face showed no surprise, no fear. She simply closed the door behind her. Then you know, she said quietly. I know you're doing something to my children, something that makes them move, makes them cry. He stepped closer. I know you disappear for 3 years and come back different. I know every family you work for calls it miraculous, but won't explain why. So you're going to tell me right now, what the hell are you? Saraphina set down her bag. I'm someone who sees what doctors can't. That's not an answer, Alaric said. Your son moved his fingers last night, kept rhythm with my song. Your daughter cried and tried to speak. She looked directly at him. Do you think that's impossible? Yes, Alaric replied. Then why are you here? Saraphina asked. The question landed like a punch. Alaric's breath caught. They're not gone, Mr. Kane. They're screaming to come back and no one's listening, except me. How? The word came out raw. Desperate. Does it matter? Saraphina moved toward the twins' beds. You want proof they're still in there? I'll give you proof, right now. But you have to trust me. I don't trust you, Alaric said. Then trust what you saw on those cameras, she looked at him. Or keep hiding in your office while your children slip away. Alaric's jaw clenched. Every instinct screamed this was insane, but he'd seen Arden's fingers move, seen Leora's tears. What do you need me to do? He asked. Saraphina's expression softened. Sit with your daughter. Hold her hand. And don't let go no matter what happens. That's it? That's everything. She moved to Arden's bedside. They've been fighting alone for 3 years. Tonight, they don't fight alone. Alaric's hands trembled as he approached Leora's bed. His daughter's face was peaceful, empty, the same face he'd been avoiding for 3 years. He took her hand. Now, Saraphina said, you're going to see what I see. She began to sing, and the room changed. The air shifted, thickened. Alaric felt it immediately, a pressure against his skin like the room itself was holding its breath. Saraphina's song filled the space, and this time Alaric heard it clearly. Not words. Something older, primal. The melody wrapped around him, through him, pulling at something deep in his chest. Leora's hand twitched in his. Stay with her, Saraphina said without breaking her song. Don't pull away. The twitching became squeezing, weak, but unmistakable. His daughter was gripping his hand. Alaric's throat tightened. Leora! Her eyes moved beneath closed lids, rapid, frantic, like she was dreaming or fighting. She's trying to surface, Saraphina said. She's been trying for 3 years, but the trauma locked her deep inside. She needs an anchor. You're her anchor. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. You need to feel. Seraphina's hands moved over Arden now, those same deliberate patterns. Your children aren't paralyzed in the way the doctors think. Their bodies can't move because their consciousness is trapped, buried under layers of pain and fear and trauma they couldn't process. Arden's fingers began to tap, stronger than before. A rhythm, a pattern. What you're calling impossible, Mr. Kane, is happening right now. Your son is communicating. Your daughter is fighting to open her eyes. The question is, are you brave enough to pull them back? Leora's grip tightened, her whole hand now, squeezing his with desperate strength. Alaric felt tears burning his eyes. How? Tell me how to help her. Talk to her. Tell her it's safe to come back. Leora, Alaric whispered, his voice breaking. Baby, I'm here. I'm right here. I'm so sorry I wasn't here before, but I'm here now and I'm not leaving. You can come back. Please come back. Her eyes snapped open. For 3 years those eyes had been vacant, empty. But now they were locked on his face with an intensity that stole his breath. Aware, present, alive. A sound came from her throat, small, strained, but a sound. Yes, Saraphina breathed. Yes, Leora, show him. Leora's mouth moved, her lips formed shapes, and then, barely audible, rough from years of silence. Da-dee. Alaric's world shattered. The word was broken. Painful. But it was real. His daughter had just spoken. His daughter, who doctors said would never speak again, had just called him Daddy. He collapsed forward, pressing his forehead to her hand, sobs racking his body. I'm here, he choked out. I'm here, baby. I'm never leaving again. Across the room, Arden's tapping grew more insistent, faster. Seraphina smiled. Your turn, brave boy. She placed both hands on Arden's chest, her song shifting to something fiercer, more urgent. And Arden's head turned, slowly, painfully, but it turned. His eyes found his father's face, and tears spilled down his cheeks. Both of them, Alaric whispered, staring between his children in disbelief. They're both. They were always here, Seraphina said quietly. You just couldn't see them. But now you do. Alaric looked at her through his tears. Who are you? Someone who knows what it's like to be trapped and forgotten. She stepped back from Arden's bed. And someone who refuses to let it happen to anyone else. The things you're doing, this isn't medicine, this isn't physical therapy, what is this? Does it matter? Seraphina met his eyes. Your children are coming back. That's all that matters. Leora's hand squeezed his again, weaker now, exhausted from the effort. But she was smiling, actually smiling. How long? Alaric asked. How long until they're fully... That depends on you, Seraphina said. I can open the doors, but you have to walk them through. Every day, every night, no more hiding, no more guilt, just love and patience and presence. She picked up her bag. Wait, Alaric said. Where are you going? My shift ended hours ago. She moved toward the door. But I'll be back tomorrow. We have a lot of work to do. Seraphina, she paused. Thank you, he whispered. I don't understand any of this, but... Thank you, she smiled. Thank me when they're running through these halls again. Until then, we fight. The door closed softly. Alaric sat in the dim room, holding his daughter's hand, watching his son's chest rise and fall with new awareness. Everything had changed, and the real work was just beginning. 3 weeks changed everything. Leora spoke in full sentences now, broken, halting, but real. Good morning, Daddy, became Alaric's favourite sound in the world. Arden could move his arms. Small movements, weak and trembling. But he could lift them, could reach for things, could touch his father's face. The medical team was baffled. Dr. Chen ran test after test, finding no explanation for the impossible recovery. "It defies everything we know about spinal cord injuries," she said. "It's like their neural pathways are rebuilding themselves." Alaric knew better. It wasn't the pathways rebuilding, it was his children clawing their way back to consciousness, one agonizing inch at a time. And Saraphina was there for all of it. She worked with them daily now, not just singing and hand movements anymore. She pushed them, challenged them, encouraged them through exercises that looked simple but left the twins exhausted and trembling. Alaric watched everything, learned everything. He was there every morning, every night, making up for 3 years of absence. But the questions haunted him. Why did Saraphina never talk about herself? Why did she flinch when he asked about her past? Why did she sometimes look at the twins with a sadness so profound it broke his heart? One night, after the twins were asleep, he found her sitting alone in the hallway, tears streaming down her face. "Saraphina," she wiped her eyes quickly, "they're doing so well." "Then why are you crying?" She didn't answer. "You're leaving soon, aren't you?" Alaric said quietly. "That's what you do. You help them recover, then you disappear." "Yes," Saraphina responded. "Why?" Alaric asked. Saraphina stood, her eyes meeting his. "Because staying means watching them forget I was ever here, and I can't." Her voice broke. "I can't do that anymore." "What happened to you?" Alaric asked. "What made you this way?" She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "I'll tell you. But not here. Tomorrow night, after the twins sleep. You deserve to know the truth." She walked away, leaving Alaric standing in the empty hallway. Tomorrow, he would finally understand. And nothing would ever be the same. The next night, Saraphina led Alaric to the rooftop garden. Manhattan glittered below them, a sea of lights stretching to the horizon. She stood at the edge, her back to him, silent. "I had a daughter," she said finally. "Her name was Amelie. She was 6 years old." Alaric's breath caught. "Car accident, just like yours." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "My husband died instantly. Amelie survived, but the doctors said the same things you heard. Paralyzed. Minimal consciousness. No hope of recovery. Saraphina, I didn't believe them. I couldn't. So I searched. Everywhere. Tibet, Morocco, the Amazon. I found healers, mystics, people who understood that consciousness isn't just trapped in the brain, it's trapped by trauma, by fear, by pain the body can't process." She turned to face him, tears streaming. "I learned everything. Ancient techniques, energy work, ways to reach minds that medicine had given up on. And after 3 years, I came back to her." "Did it work?" Alaric whispered. "She opened her eyes the first night I sang to her. She spoke my name after 2 weeks. After 3 months, she could move her hands." Seraphina's smile was broken. After 6 months, she took her first steps. "That's incredible." After 7 months, she died. The words hung in the air like shattered glass. Her body couldn't sustain the recovery. The damage was too severe. The healing I forced was too fast, too aggressive. She had a seizure in her sleep and... Seraphina's voice cracked. "I brought her back just to lose her again." Alaric felt his chest tighten. "I'm so sorry. Every child I help, I see her. Every breakthrough, every first word, every movement. It's Amelie all over again. And every time I have to leave before I get too attached, before I start hoping they're her replacement, before I destroy myself, trying to save what I already lost." She looked at him with eyes full of grief. "Your children are recovering faster than anyone I've worked with, stronger, but you need to know the risk. If we push too hard, if their bodies can't handle the pace..." "Stop," Alaric said firmly. "Right now. We slow down. We do this safely." "But they want to come back so badly." Then we bring them back the right way. He stepped closer. You gave me my children. Now let me give you something back. Stay. Not as their caregiver, as family. Let us help you heal too. Saraphina shook her head. I don't deserve... Yes, you do. Alaric took her hand. Amelie would want you to live, not punish yourself forever, and my children need you. I need you. She looked up at him, hope and fear warring in her eyes. Stay, he said again. Please. For the first time in years, Saraphina allowed herself to believe. Okay, she whispered, I'll stay. 6 months later. Daddy, watch me! Alaric looked up to see Leora running across the garden, running. His daughter, who couldn't move, was now racing through flowers, laughing. Arden sat nearby with Saraphina, slowly turning pages of a book. His hands worked. His voice spoke. The butterfly landed on the rose. The doctors had no explanation. They called it impossible, unprecedented, miraculous. Alaric called it love. Can we go to the park tomorrow? Leora asked, breathless and beaming. The real park? Anywhere you want, Alaric said, pulling her close. That night he found Saraphina in the hallway. You're staying, right? He asked. Not leaving like the others. She smiled. I'm staying. This is home now. Amelie would be proud of you. Saraphina's eyes glistened. I think she would be too. Down the hall, Leora called out, Saraphina, sing the song? The same melody that started everything, that pulled 2 children back from darkness. Saraphina squeezed Alaric's hand and walked toward their room. As her voice rose in song, Alaric closed his eyes. His children were alive, truly alive. And the woman who saved them had finally saved herself. Some miracles couldn't be explained. They could only be lived. If you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, and subscribe for more. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated, share the story with friends, and join us for more stories.